Hello friends and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start today's video with a story in which our OP got his honestly earned money. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. So, you won't pay me for the additional 1 hour I work? Okay. In 2003, I started working on a new dairy processing plant project in Saudi Arabia. The electromechanical works were done by a British company who worked from inside the dairy company's plant premises and didn't have a valid contracting license to do work in Saudi Arabia. The contract between the dairy company and the electromechanical company was made in the UK, and the EM company worked inside the dairy plant premises as their representatives to avoid legal hassles. I was hired by the EM company through a manpower company run by a totally shady and creepy dude. At that time, I was slightly obese, and in order to cut down my weight, I never had any lunch breaks. I used to work straight from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., totaling 9 hours, 1 hour additional to the usual 8 hours. I was paid a fixed salary by the manpower company, but they charged the British EM company on an hourly basis at a very high rate. After 2 months, I learned they were billing the EM company for my time for 9 hours while they were not paying a corresponding salary to me. I cross-checked with my boss, the project manager at the EM company, and he confirmed, so I took it up with the shady dude at Manpower Company and informed him that if they're billing for 9 hours for me to the client, I should have a corresponding increase in pay. He refused outright. I requested the dude again for a raise 1 month later and was refused. Okay, two can play the game. I informed the EM company's project manager that henceforth I will start taking my lunch break even if I don't eat anything, and they should pay attention to the timesheet the Manpower Company submits for my billing time. The month comes to an end, and the Manpower Company submits the invoice for my time, with 9 hours marked as daily hours worked, and was rejected outright. The EM company project manager informed the shady dude that they can't bill for time not worked. They came to me and asked me to work during the lunch breaks and refused outright. They pleaded, and I agreed if they start paying for that additional hour for the past 4 months and for every future month. They had to agree. I went back to working the lunch breaks and started getting paid for the additional hour too. I made a good amount. And our second story. Lady has to walk to her car for her ID and has a fit. This happened the other day when I was working in the money center of the large retail store I work in. RL is rude lady, me is me. RL came up and asked for a $1,000 money order. The system comes up with a screen for me to scan her ID because any money order that's $1,000 or more requires an ID, so I asked the lady for her ID. RL: since when do you need an ID for a money order? Me: well, since the money order's for $1,000, our system requires we have your ID in order to proceed with the transaction. But my ID's in my car. Well, I can't continue the transaction without your ID. But my picture's on my debit card. I'm sorry, ma'am, but that doesn't count. I have to have an actual ID. Well, we can just do 2 separate money orders for $500 each. No, ma'am, we can't do that either. Our policy states that all money orders for the same person must be done in a single transaction, so I'd still need your ID. Rude lady storms off. I go back to the service desk and help get the line down over there when RL comes back in and asks my manager what's the most she can get on a money order without her ID, and my manager tells her $999. Someone else needed a money order, so I headed back to the money center to help them, and rude lady followed shortly behind. I finish up with the other customer, and the rude lady comes back to the counter. I need a money order for $1,000. Okay, can I see your ID? Here, and slams her ID on the counter. I can't believe you made me walk all the way out to my car over $1 effing dollar. Sorry, ma'am, that's just the policy. She continues talking about me to herself. I just ignore her and finish up the money order. All right, there you go. Thank you and have a great night. She starts to walk off, but decides to be a complete a-hole instead. She slammed the money order on the counter and began yelling at me. Put it in my hand. Put it in my effing hand since you want to sit there and treat me like a dog. What? I just decided it'd be best to ignore her and keep walking back to the service desk. Wrong. That's right. Walk away, you nasty white bee. Excuse me? Let me go grab my manager real quick. RL ran out of the store before I could make it around the corner to my manager. I went and told my manager, and she tried to chase her down because she's not afraid of getting fired for talking back to a customer, and she doesn't let anyone treat her employees like that. Unfortunately, she didn't catch her. All that over having to walk out to your car in the parking lot because you didn't have your ID. I will never understand people. And our last story. I am an office legend now. Mid-pandemic, my boss disappeared. Just as we were gearing up for our most challenging, time-intensive project in the last 5 years, he dropped off the face of the earth. We kept working for a week or so without him because everything was virtual and the virtual work world was still so new, we didn't really need him. We were delegating tasks ourselves and completing things on our own. We spoke to coworkers maybe twice a week. But some decisions were beyond our discretion, so we couldn't move forward on those aspects of the project until we received a response from him. After about 7 to 10 total days of silence, we called his boss's boss, who informed our team that our boss had COVID, so wasn't able to work right now. We took that at face value, of course, sent him letters of well wishes, and didn't bother him with work stuff or ask why he was able to notify his boss but not us. 3 weeks go by, still not a word. We're beginning to discuss amongst ourselves whether or not he's maybe died. We're terrified and horrified and so concerned, we're contemplating calling his extended family. We're sending flowers and care packages to his apartment. Meanwhile, the project has descended into chaos because no leader was appointed in our boss's stead. So we're forced to navigate several layers of bureaucracy in order to accomplish most anything at all, whereas in the past he would have just signed off in real time. Around week 4 or 5, one of our coworkers suggests he doesn't really have COVID, but is instead using it as an excuse to take time off. We all jump all over our coworker, asking how he could insinuate something like that, and lamenting about what a tragedy our boss is probably living through. People were chilly to him for days after that. Week 7, we're undertaking a letter-writing campaign to upper management demanding an acting boss be appointed while ours is recovering. The project's a month behind schedule. We're all working overtime every day, sometimes on weekends without extra compensation, just to keep up with the cluster F of the boss's sudden absence. Week 8, he finally reappears, logging into a morning meeting as though nothing happened. He looks well-rested, well-fed, and has a tan. Not at all like someone who's just come out the other side of a 6-week respiratory virus. He says something quickly to the effect of, "Yeah, that was brutal. Glad to be better and glad to be back. Let's get to work." But doesn't want to talk about what happened or answer any of our questions like, were you in the hospital, what was it like, etc. Fast forward to about 4 or 5 months after this. My sister sends me a promo for a fairly new reality show. I've never heard of it, but it's on a major platform, and says, "Isn't this guy a friend of yours or something? I swear I've seen him and you together." I watched the trailer for the show, and lo and behold, there's my boss, participating as a contestant on a reality TV show. It didn't take long for me to put the pieces together and realize he took extended leave to go on TV, that he knew he wouldn't otherwise get during this massive project, and lied about it under the guise of a vicious disease that nearly all of us had lost a loved one to. I sit and stew with this information, unsure of how to handle it. I know confronting him won't get me very far, but I can't just do nothing, right? I'm not close enough with any of my colleagues to discuss this with them and trust they wouldn't run off and send an all-company email about it. So I slept on it a few nights, and then the opportunity fell right in my lap. I got an email from corporate encouraging teams still working remotely to plan virtual social functions to keep a collegial culture going and to stay in touch. Among the suggestions were game night, trivia, and watch party. With the premiere of the show only a couple weeks away, I got busy telling everyone how I'd been meaning to get into the show. It's so enticing and exciting, basically laying the groundwork to guilt them into coming to an impromptu virtual watch party off hours. I offered to get special shirts made up and send them to each person's house, whatever I had to do to get the attention of corporate. Finally, I sent an evite to all my boss's bosses and any other members of corporate I could justify inviting without making a total butt of myself. Because this is entirely virtual, my boss is unable to overhear any of the chatter. He doesn't realize I'm hyping up this show and doesn't realize I've planned a watch party for it. I wasn't inviting him unless he had the balls to explicitly ask about it. I was hoping he wouldn't have heard about it at all, not until afterwards. That was really the only way this could work. The night comes and I'm screen sharing the show to a whopping 64 people, a huge chunk of my department. Many members of corporate had showed up because I was the only person stupid enough to buy into their virtual social work party scheme, so they felt pressured to support it. I was holding my breath, hoping this would go my way, bracing myself for some kind of curveball, but there wasn't even that dramatic of a buildup. Right at the outset, they introduced the premise, which included the contestants being in a COVID-safe bubble in an exotic location, and gave a brief overview of each contestant. As my boss was introduced, right down to what he did for work, I could see people register delight and surprise, then go blank, just before sliding into confusion and rage. The chat took a drastic turn from, "Oh my goodness," and "I knew him when," and all sorts of pithy jokes, to a brave member of my team, or perhaps one just pushed a tad too far by all the extra hours he pulled in this douche's absence, sent the message, "Wait, when was this filmed?" My audience dropped from 64 to 58 to mid-30s, and by the time the episode was over, it was just me and the other 15 core members of the team. One asked if I'd already known, but some members of the team are very close to the boss, so all I said was, "Well, I definitely do now," and wrapped up the call party quickly after that. Perhaps one of the best bonuses is that you could already tell from the episode one of the characters' arc and the show assigned to our boss was Bumbling Idiot. He had his true colors on in full display, and some production massaging upped them to the 11th degree. Boss was fired, my good buddy was promoted to his place. I'm an office legend now, especially since no one is 100% sure whether or not it was intentional. And it was also satisfying that it was almost worth the dozens of hours uncompensated overtime that led to it. That is a legendary revenge I can only dream of. Bravo! Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.